This month's podcasts are sponsored by Aubergine Legal. Do you sometimes worry that your business isn't meeting all its legal compliance requirements and wonder if you're ticking all the legal boxes? Are you losing sleep worrying about a piece of legislation that you may or may not be complying with? Perhaps you need some help with your client contracts or your data protection compliance. Or maybe you're worried that your website doesn't have the right documents or legal notices in the right place. Perhaps you have a brand that you want to protect with a trademark. How about if you could outsource it all and eliminate all of your worries? If so, then get in touch with Aubergine Legal, a friendly commercial legal consultancy offering practical and clear commercial legal advice without the overwhelming legal jargon, taking the worry away and helping you to protect your business and minimise your risks. Aubergine offers a free 30-minute consultation if you have any questions or want to find out if they can help, and you can access this link and book your free 30-minute call via the link in the show notes.
Welcome to the Bring Your Product Ideas to Life podcast. Practical advice and inspiration to help you create and sell your own physical products. Here's your host, Vicky Weinberg.
Today I'm speaking with Lianne Harris. Lianne helps small businesses increase sales and website traffic by building brand awareness on Pinterest. I've wanted to have a Pinterest expert on for quite some time because I've heard that it's a great place to promote and sell products. I had to go over myself a while ago, didn't really know what I was doing, and so I thought, let's find an expert. So Lianne is going to tell us all about Pinterest, why your product should be there, and how to best utilise it to get people over to your website and ultimately to buy your products. So I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Lianne, and I'd love to introduce you to her. So hi Lianne, thank you so much for being here.
It's okay.
Could you start by giving an introduction to yourself, your business, and what you do, please?
Yep, I'm Lianne Harris. I run Pin Social. It's a Pinterest and social media management company. I do specialise in Pinterest, and I help small businesses with getting their brand out there and get people to see them and hopefully convert into sales.
Perfect, thank you. So we were just talking before we recorded that I am a bit of a Pinterest beginner. I've used it for to home decoration projects over the years. I dabbled and used it for a products business, didn't really know what I was doing and gave up. So I'm coming to this as a complete novice. So can we start with an introduction to Pinterest, what it is and how people are using it? Because I'm sure that people are using it in many more varied ways than I was.
So Pinterest is a visual search engine. So just like Google and YouTube. So YouTube obviously is all videos. Google, you can literally find anything. So Pinterest is it was predominantly just images, but we do also have videos that now starting to creep into there as well. Essentially, people, like we spoke about earlier, think that it's just about finding recipes, home inspiration and fashion, but products can actually be purchased through there, as well as looking for services. Anything that people want to look for, you can literally find. Just look in the search bar and just type in the words of what it is that you're looking for, and you'll be able to find your answers there.
Okay, thank you. And so are people using it for more than just recipes and fashion ideas? Are they using Pinterest for probably not quite as exactly the same as they're using Google, but are they using it for a wider range of things now?
Yeah, so we found that during lockdown and since then, people have gone there for ways to try and help with their mindset. So Pinterest seems to be very much a place that it's trying to be more eco-friendly and mindful. So anything that you want to go to, maybe just to practice yoga or things like breathing techniques, it's all become very, as people say, woo in that sense. So it's become very mindful of the way people are feeling and trying to push that kind of the wellness and I'm trying to think of being sustainable and living in that eco kind of sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get the impression actually from just the very little I've used it that it seems to be quite a positive place as well.
Yeah, Yeah, no, that's it. That's exactly. They're trying to make it all positive. They've done a lot in the sense of they've banned the ability to do anything in terms of dieting, in the sense of trying to push the dieting products. So obviously, if you want to do healthy lifestyle and healthier recipes, that's okay. But when it comes to pushing the diet pills and all things like that, so they want it to be all positive about feeling good. But they've also stopped in terms of anything with the teenagers looking at anything explicit in terms of depression, and that kind of the darker route. They're trying to encourage the positivity in mental health rather than allowing and encouraging people to search for the darker side.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in the simplest terms, I guess a pin is an image, isn't it, or a video that then links through to a web page or somewhere else. Is that the right way of thinking about it?
Yeah, no, that's perfectly it. So essentially, Pinterest started off just like a pin board. So like you would at home, like an inspiration thing that you literally just pin it, and that would be what it looks pretty. But when you actually click on the image or the video, not only does it have an actual description, so it gives you more information and a little bite-sized element, but by clicking on that, it then takes you to a website. So obviously in terms of business, that's amazing because you're then potentially getting someone to then look at everything on your website. So as long as the image is good and it's eye-catching and it's pleasing, that's going to help with a sales funnel.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to make your pins look good later. Obviously, this is a podcast for product businesses, but just, to cover this off as well, because I think it's good to know, do people look for services on Pinterest or is it mainly products?
Yep. No, people look for services. I have a photographer client, and she's also local, so which is perfect because the amount of people that think, oh, well, I only deal with local clients, Pinterest isn't for me. That's not the case. Even if you're a product based but only deal with a local area, it's all about using your keywords, which is essential. Just like it is with your SEO for Google, you need to use that when it comes to using your pins, because then you can kind of home in. Trying to think, you can also use it if you're a blogger. That's how I actually started off using Pinterest. So as a blogger, obviously blog posts are amazing, but they're not the be all and end all anymore. Being a service or a product base, you can just utilize what your products.
That makes sense. Thank you. We'll definitely talk about keywords a bit later because I really want to dig into those. And yeah, what you said really makes sense because people talk a lot now about repurposing content, and I guess creating a pin for your blog post is just another way of repurposing it and get it in front of different people. So why is Pinterest good for product businesses, and what are some of the opportunities? So how might you use Pinterest as a product business, and why is it a good thing to do?
Well, it's evolved from a website, as I've said, that was essentially a pin board. Oh, sorry. But Pinterest is actually the third largest search engine in the world, behind Google and YouTube. So that just shows how amazing that Pinterest is and how vital it can be to a marketing strategy. But there's a shopping integration feature that they now have, that I think it's Shopify in the UK. As long as you've got Shopify, then you can then connect it, and it's just like Instagram. You can't purchase literally direct through the platform, but it'll direct you immediately to that product. So you can then buy, but you can upload your catalogue. So if you look at New Look on Pinterest, it will show you that there's the front cover. When you click on their profile, it's going to have the shop feature first. That's immediately what you see, and they categorize it, what the different types of clothes, like trousers, men's, women, children. And so it's so much easier for the user to go and see what it is that they want to buy, rather than having to trawl through all of these people's pins to potentially find something.
Yeah. And what if you don't have Shopify? Can you still link through to like the sales page on your website, for example?
Yep, there is a thing called rich pins. So it essentially pulls through all the information from the website. So if you were to type in a URL for, say, a silver necklace that you sell, it will, because you've got this thing called rich pins set up, it will pull through. So if you have a special offer, say for Black Friday, or for Christmas or Valentine's Day, whatever, it will pull through that discount automatically for you. And then when it goes back to full price, it will then automatically go back up to full price. So you don't have to do anything other than just pull through the image and the URL. So it's fantastic.
Oh, that's clever. And that was called Rich Pins, did you say?
Yeah.
And is that something that you have to set up, or is that something that's in Pinterest already?
You need to claim your website in your settings, and then it will give you a bit of HTML that you need to just put into your website. But as soon as that's put into your website, it will just do it for you.
Okay, well, that certainly sounds doable. So let's talk a bit more about setup. So what are the basic things you need to do? So if I wanted to set up a Pinterest account for my products today, what are the things I need to do?
Make sure it's a business account for sure. Create pin boards. So what I normally say is think of the 10 most important elements of your business that you need to create the boards. And then if you create pins, so you need to think of the products that you want to push that are, whether it be your best sellers, which predominantly if your most popular purchases, because then that can just kind of work in the background whilst you then upload the other elements. Claim your website, like I said. I was trying to think if there's anything else. Create your biography. Make sure that you, in your biography, make sure it's all SEO friendly. And just do your research for that. So then when you create your pins, they've got the best opportunity.
Okay, and when it comes to the keywords, I'm assuming that, so is keywords not hashtags on Pinterest, is that right?
No hashtags on Pinterest.
Okay, I've seen them on there, but then I also saw a post on your Instagram recently, Lianne, where you were saying that actually Pinterest have confirmed that they're not even used.
Yeah, no, they used to be used, and then they're like, no, actually, we're not going to use that as a feature. So not anymore.
Okay, that's good to know. And how would you go about researching the keywords for Pinterest? So let's say you're thinking about writing your biography and you're not really sure what words and phrases to use. Would you just use the Pinterest search bar for that, or are there other tools that you can look at?
You can use the search bar. That will show you what people are actually looking for. So then when you look in the drop down, as you type a word in, they'll show a drop down and they'll show you other potential items. There is also the trends thing. So I think it's in analytics on the top. If you click on that, and then they'll have a page called trends. In that, it will show you when you type the words in, it will have like a little graph, and it'll show you obviously if it's peaking, so it'll be trending, or if it's dropping, then you know that it's not the most popular thing. So it just helps you put together a strategy of what is and what isn't going to work at that point in time.
That makes sense. Thank you. And when it comes to setting up boards, so I understand that you have your account and then you have boards, which are like different categories. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong, Lianne. And then you put pins perfect under each board. So you mentioned maybe having 8 to 10 boards. So let's say you're a products business and you sell one sort of product, say you sell jewelry. Is it a case of having like a board for necklaces, a board for rings, let's say, or well, actually, let's say you only sell earrings. So let's say you just sell earrings. So you might have a board of earrings. What other kind of boards would you be thinking of creating?
You could then you might think, oh, I just sell earrings, but you've got gold earrings, silver earrings, white gold earrings. You've then got drops, hoops, cuffs. Can you tell I've done jewelry before? There is so many different types. You could then do just the business name in itself. So if it becomes a bit of a brand name that people know, just trying to think, you could then do gifts for her, and then if you do male earrings, gifts for him. birthday gifts, gifts for the girlfriend, gifts for the mother. It's trying to be creative. And I say it's almost like a tree, you're branching out. So if you've got one idea, then you just see how you can branch that one idea off. But you can only use 10 boards for one pin. It just keeps it saves it being repeated, because I know that as a user, it could be frustrating. You type in something, you literally see the same image over and over again, and you're just like, no, I want to find something else. I don't want to see just the same thing. And that's what it stops doing. It stops the repetitiveness and the spam. And that's why you're restricted to 10.
So 10, is that 10 pins for each?
Yeah, for the
10
same,
pins?
yeah, 10 pins for that same image. So say you got say a gold hoop, and it's the same, you've done 10 boards for this one gold hoop, but if you've then got a completely different picture of the same product, but it's a different if you got the different like backgrounds and you got different items when in your flat lay, you can then get away with doing that because it's a different image, because Pinterest loves fresh images. So whilst you've used them 10 boards, you might have 20 boards that are still relevant that you can use, but you can then just use them extra 10, so the 10 to 20 boards, you can use that on the second image.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can have different images taking you to the same product.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so coming on to pins, what should you be pinning? Because I'm assuming you can't just pin pictures of your product, or maybe you can just pin pictures of your products. Yeah. I don't know. But what would we be looking at pinning, particularly if you sell a limited range of products, let's say, say you've got quite a small range. So you might think, okay, I've got five products and I've posted pictures of all of those. Then what would you do?
If it's a product, 9 times out of 10, you can have a model modeling it, whether they're wearing it or they're using it or something along them lines. So you can then have a model involved in the picture. You can do as many flat lays as you want. And then you could even have it sat, if it's like a household item, sat in a kitchen. So it's a completely different setup. Have it in the grass, in the sunshine. And honestly, it's about being creative. You can have 5 items, you can have just one item, but as long as that one item is being photographed and then being used, you can then have a completely different model. You can have a man holding it, a child holding it. It's honestly, the sky's the limit.
Okay, so you can post pins of, so yeah, like you say, you've got one product, so you can just keep posting about that one product just with different images.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you could or should be pinning as well as that?
If you have any blog posts, that would work. You can also try to get people to subscribe to your newsletter if you've got an email list. That's always really good, because then you can then just, when you get a subscriber, you can then jump into their emails and then you can give them more information about you as a business. So you've got that. You can then also just, whilst you can send them to your homepage, it is kind of recommended to not, just because only sending to your homepage, it's just a bit, I want to say boring. It's not, but it's kind of a last resort, I would say. But you can do about me's, contact page, so you can literally send them straight to your contact page. I was trying to think what else if you've got limited. You can do an infographic, and then you can then, so that'll give you information about something if there's a product that you do. So rather than doing an actual blog post, you can have it all on the infographic. You can do a video of you creating the product if you create it from home. So jewelry, if it's handmade jewelry, then you can just do like you creating something. Yeah, it literally is a case of just thinking outside the box and trying to think of what you can do. And I think it's more so if you're limited on the products, it is a case of you're going to have to be that little bit more creative and in thinking.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming that you need to be posting, I don't know how often, you can let us know, Lianne, how often you need to be updating your Pinterest. Because I'm assuming that if you go on and you create posts for different pages on your website, different products, and then you don't do anything for a couple of months, I'm assuming your traffic's going to drop off at some point.
Yeah, you need to be consistent. They do say that the recommended number is 15 to 25 pins a day, but that's at a limit. So you're not needing to post that much. I can sometimes only post 2-3 times maximum a day, and that includes repins for clients, and they still see a progress. What Pinterest is looking for is consistency. So you might only pin one but as long as it's every day, that's fine. And they see that there's that consistency there, and they see that's how your account is working. What they do say though is that with your pins, that one pin, make sure that you leave a gap of at least 2 days before you share it to a different board, just so you're not spamming and you're giving the user other content from your profile.
Okay, so like if I created a pin on Monday, on Thursday or Friday, I could go in and add that to a different board.
Yeah.
So it sounds like especially if you're getting started and you're creating, I don't know, 20 pins or something, would it make more sense to, rather than go and add all these 20 pins and put them on your different boards, would it make sense to add one on Monday, one on Tuesday, repin something on Wednesday, and eke it out a little bit?
Yeah, no, that'll work. What I'd probably say is, if anything, maybe just do 5 pins to start with, and do it like every day, and then just rotate it on a 5-day basis. And then once I've done, because I have spreadsheets, and I do recommend having spreadsheets, because if you do it manually, it then just helps. But there is Tailwind, which is a scheduler that you upload it, but as you upload it, you state the 10 boards that you want to pin it to, and then you tell it how many days in the interval. So it will then automatically populate that for you. So rather than going through Pinterest and like every couple of days having to then go back in, repin it to a different board, and then finding it, it does it all for you.
Okay, and that was called Tailwind.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So I can see now that it could be not loads of work, but actually lots of thinking about, okay, today what am I going to pin and where am I going to move this to? I could totally see that you need something to keep organized. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more to it than I thought. Although saying that, thank you for making it sound quite straightforward. It sounds like once you get going and you get some momentum, it probably gets easier. Am I right?
Yeah, it's quite seems quite overwhelming, and there's a lot of information. It's not like with Instagram, we're like, upload a pretty image and just write, oh, hi everyone, right, how are you today, kind of thing, and then add some hashtags in. You've got to do your research to start with, but once you've got your pin and you know what you're going to be writing and where you want to share it to, it's then kind of, once it's done and it's out there, you just leave it, and it kind of just builds its own momentum, and you hope that it does well. And then if it doesn't, you've then got to just re-look at it. It's almost like a constant marketing strategy. If it's not doing well and your account's not doing well, then you've got to tweak it and see what's working.
Yeah. And do you get many analytics on Pinterest? So can you go and see which pins are working and which aren't and things like that?
Yeah, you get lots. So it shows you your impressions. You've then got, when people click onto your pin just to look at your pin description, it shows you that. So it tells you how many times people do that, how many times people save your pin. So if they save it to their own boards, that's another thing that you can see. Obviously, you see the traffic that if people click onto your website, there's that. You can then see if, say you share something, then someone goes onto your website and shares something else, they've created a pin from your website. So you can see that you're getting traffic because it's linking to your website, but you didn't create it yourself. So you can then still see that. You can see what other people are sharing for all your content. And that's really good, because then it shows that people actually care about what you're doing and they like it enough that they want to show people your stuff. which is obviously
Yeah.
always nice. But yeah,
That does sound good. And someone sharing your pin, is that called a repin? You mentioned a repin earlier, and I've been waiting to ask you what that's called.
Yeah, that's a repin.
Okay. And sorry, I've got so many questions. Is repinning something that you should be doing yourself? I asked this because I have someone I was talking to for a podcast interview that's already gone out, and she was mentioning that she does really well on Pinterest. She gets lots of traffic, and she repins almost I guess we would call them competitor pins on her boards. It doesn't seem to affect the sales she gets. I just found that really interesting because I've never heard of anybody doing that. So
That's
should you be repinning other people's things?
See, it's a bit of a if you want to. Back in the day, it used to be recommended that for every pin you did, you then repinned another 4 of other people's. However, that's not really the case now. They're just saying to focus on your own content and make sure that the content you produce is good. However, if you do fashion and then you want some jewelry to potentially complement an item, you're going to have to go elsewhere. And especially if you've got a model shoot, or if you're a stylist and you want to show items, you're going to have to. And if you're doing interior design, if your service is interior design, you're going to have to repin. So I suppose it all kind of depends on what your business is. And obviously, if you're a product based, it might work well. Like if you're a product based, and say you sell kitchen items, so you're going to want to show. So you might go to a place like Wix, who shows a setup of a kitchen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. So it might be things that say, like someone who liked, they did a quick lookalike audience or something. So if you were selling kitchen utensils, let's say, someone who was looking at kitchen utensils might also be interested on a board of really glamorous kitchens or something.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, or kitchen hacks, or is it more thinking like that, thinking, okay, someone who likes my product might also like this type of content?
Yeah, it's like complementary things, but don't create a separate board for that. Include it in the board that you're pinning your content with, because if someone comes across something that you've pinned but isn't yours, so say go with the example of the utensils and the glamorous kitchen, someone sees this glamorous kitchen, clicks on it, has a look, and then sees that the person who pinned it was you, but then goes onto your profile or the board to have a look at what other content they've got, then they'll find your utensils and all your other wonderful utensils that you sell, and that is where you've potentially got the person, because they found what you've repinned from someone else's glamorous kitchen.
That makes sense, because am I right in thinking that you can either follow an account or you can follow a board? Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's been a while since I used Pinterest personally, but I kind of remember that. So I guess, yes, so if your board is only somebody else's kitchens and someone follows that board, they're never seeing anything of you, are they?
Exactly, yeah. So if you then have your content amongst that and whereas before they said that make sure that it was the repins that was the majority of the board, I would say no, make sure that your content is that majority of the board, and then just a few repins that kind of, like, I'd say highlight or shows as an example of how it can look in that, because at the end of the day, it is inspiration. You're meant to be giving people ideas on how they can do something. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. But I suppose for anyone who's listening and thinking this all sounds a lot of work, it's perfectly fine just to create and pin your own pins, and don't worry about everything else. That's really simple. Yeah, that is really good to know, because you're right. When I had dabbled in Pinterest, which was, I want to say about 2 years ago now, I thought I'm gonna have a go, and the advice then was exactly as you're saying, you have to be doing this amount of repins, and it all just seemed that, you know, it seemed a lot to keep on top of your own content and then look for other relevant content to repin. I found that actually took quite a bit of time, you know, just trawling through and thinking of what can I add to my boards.
Especially not vetting competitors either. So yeah. I had a client, they did jewelry, and to try and find, they wanted me to incorporate models with using fashion, but to try and find a picture of a model on Pinterest without jewelry or jewelry not being in sight, it took forever. And I was trying to explain to them that it was taking too much time away from actually reaping in their content and creating new pins. It's impossible. So yeah, now that it's minimal, it's so much easier.
And is it still the case? Because I remember sort of back when I was looking into this, that the more recent pins are shown at the top if you search for something. Is that still how Pinterest is ordered, or has that changed now as well?
You can have it at the most recent boards, because you have two tabs. You've got Create, which are where you've uploaded directly onto Pinterest, and then it'll show you an idea pins at the top, and then the second tab will have your boards, and it'll show you the most recent boards that have been saved to at the top, but then it has the first folder is all pins, so you can click on just all pins. It literally shows you everything that has been done on the account.
Okay.
But yeah.
But if you were going on as a user, let's say, and you're going on to search for, let's say, earrings, because we've used that example already, and you're typing gold hoop earrings into Pinterest, are you going to see the most recent pins first or the most relevant pins first? The reason I ask that is back when I was having a go at Pinterest, it was all about the most recent ones go to the top. So you need to be pinning however many times a day to make sure yours is at the top. Is that still the case, or has that changed now?
No, it has changed. Straight away, you're going to have the ads. So if you don't want to go for ads, then just skip down a little bit. They actually use an algorithm in the sense of you're about to see, I can see the sneeze coming. They actually do based on what you think you would like. But if it's the first time you've ever looked, I don't actually know. I think it'll be a mixture of the most popular and the most recent at the same time.
Okay, and then the more you use it and it understands the kind of things you click on, I guess it's like Google or anything else, it kind of adapts to you as it learns more about you.
Yeah, because the home feed is a curation of everything that you've previously seen. So if you start researching weddings and everything to do with weddings, that's all you're going to see. I then the other week started researching tattoos and tattoo inspirations, and that's literally everything got covered. My news feed on Pinterest is literally Disney, quotes, and tattoos.
Okay, no, that's good. But I guess what's good about that is that it takes away the need to think you have to be pinning constantly to stay at the top. So that's good. So I think all in all, it sounds like all the changes that have happened on Pinterest are actually making it easier as a business.
It's easier for a business, but it's also it was done in the sense of to make the user experience better. So you look for something, you get given that answer. So you've got a problem, they solve it for you. And that's essentially what they're trying to get from the changes on Pinterest.
It all sounds really positive for everyone. You mentioned ads then, and I'm going to come back to ads in a moment because I didn't even know you could do ads on Pinterest. But before that, let's just talk a little bit about actually creating the visuals on Pinterest. So the actual pins. Do you have any tips or guidance on how to, how to create really engaging pins that people will actually click on visually?
Yep. So it's a 2:3 ratio. I always do 1,000 by 1,500 pixels. Canva is literally the be all and end all. Everyone needs to get Canva if you haven't already. If you don't use the right ratio, Pinterest actually crops the image. So if you've got some text written across it and you're using the wrong size, then there's a risk that you'll end up having half of your writing cut off. Make sure that the image you're using is clear, crisp, and it should represent you as a business anyway. So if you have a blurry image, it's not going to look good, and it gives your brand a bad reputation from that image. So make sure that it's nice and clear. You need to make sure that you use your branding. So try to stick to the same fonts. If you've got a logo, stick to the same colors, but at the same time, you want it to be eye-catching. But your branding should be eye-catching anyway, to an extent. If you're going to be writing on the pin, make sure that you can see it clearly. If you have to use like a block background just to make it stand out, that's absolutely fine. But make sure that the font is legible. There we go. There's a word. Make sure it's clear. Make sure that people can actually read what you're writing. Purely because that can actually be taken by Pinterest and placed. So if people are looking for something specifically and you've got text that matches it in terms of SEO, they're going to be able to show up in that. So if they can't read it, they're not going to know where to place it, and it's just going to sit at the bottom of the search. Try to keep all of your images consistent in terms of their looks and their colors, because if you have a set template and people recognize you for that, then they'll be like, oh, that's that brand, and if they like you, they're going to keep on looking at your content because they see it as they're scrolling. They do say that if you've got multiple images on a pin, it actually does better in terms of engagement than just having one set image. So that might be something that you want to play with. But whilst I say this, it's similar to Instagram with the 30 hashtags. Some accounts have to have that 30 hashtags to do well. And some people say, oh, you can only need like 7 or 11, and that works well for them. So it is a kind of try and test it, see what works for your account. But yeah, that's essentially what works.
That's really good, thank you. And in terms of the text, I know I'm getting really specific here, but is that like, I know on some platforms they say, oh, the text needs to be on the right or the left or the top or the bottom. Are there any rules like that when it comes to Pinterest, or is it just no, it needs to be legible and it doesn't really matter where you put
legible? I would definitely say I always say keep it similar to on the stories on Instagram, where you've got the blue outline bit that kind of shows you within a certain area. I would definitely say that in sense of the main text. Don't put your logo in the bottom right hand corner, because when you're on your mobile, they have, I don't even know what it's called, but it's like a little square, and it can pick up other things that are similar. So when you've got like more of these, and you might like this, it picks that up. So then if you've got your logo on the bottom right hand corner, it gets covered by that on mobiles. So if that's the only place that you can put a logo within the image, it might be worth just actually writing your website address and just put that along the bottom.
A really good tip, thank you. That's really good to know. But so it sounds like if you create your image to the right ratio, and Canva sounds good because obviously they have loads of templates and things as well, don't they?
They've got a template.
Yeah, at least if you create it in Canva and it's the right ratio, nothing's going to get cut off either. Yeah. So that sounds like a really good way to go actually with creating pins, because I guess if you try and use the same images you use on Instagram, for example, they're just not going to be sized right, are they? And bits are going to get moved around. No,
you can resize it on Canva though, which is what's amazing. So if you want to repurpose exactly the same image, you can do that. It's just, I normally say create your pin first and then condense it down, because then enlarging it can sometimes then play around with the quality of the image. So definitely try and do your pin first and then copy and resize it into Instagram, sorry.
That's a great tip, thank you. I've never thought of actually doing it that way, but you're right, because of course, if you're making the image larger, sometimes then it can distort slightly, and then you get those
blurry,
or you get those gaps at the edges where it doesn't quite fit. So that's perfect, thank you. And okay, so that's good. And I'm thinking as well that with Pinterest, I mean, I'm thinking for myself that I guess a good way of sort of working out how to create a pin is to go on Pinterest and look at people's pins as well, I suppose.
Yeah, also if you go onto Pinterest and look at competitors, a good thing, especially if you're starting out, or even if not, if you're feeling like your account's starting to either stagnate or it's dropping, look at your competitors' account and see what's working well for them, what you like, and try and put yourself in the customers or the client's point shoes and see what would attract them to your competitors, and then not directly copy, but take inspiration from it and then put your own voice and your own stamp on it.
That makes sense. I think it makes sense to look somewhere for inspiration, because sometimes that's the hardest thing, isn't it? Just kind of working out your style and what sort of things you're going to pin and what they might look like.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that once you get going, especially, it's good what you said about consistency, because I'm assuming that once you've got going, you're going to have some templates and it just gets easier and easier to create them.
Yeah. And it's literally just dragging in a different image, quickly changing up the text, and then you've got your fixed. You're not then having to think, well, how shall I make it look this time? How can I make it look? Because if you keep it all, I've got about 5 or 6 different templates, and I literally just have it in one file in Canva, and then I literally just keep on scrolling and just dragging images in, and it can be really quick.
That's a really good tip. Thank you. And when it comes to the description, is there a character count for that, or can it, well, I'm assuming, yeah, there is.
Yeah. So you've got 500 characters in the pin description. The boards also need a description, and there's 200 characters there. The more you use, the more chances you've got of being seen. Make sure it flows organically. So don't literally just write keywords. Make sure it's like a sentence. But the first 100 characters are what's seen before it has the read more button. So those are the most essential, and what should be the eye-catching and like the attention-grabbing parts.
Okay, so that's the bit that you absolutely would want someone to
definitely
read. And do the keywords work like that as well? As in, should you have your most important keywords in that first 100 characters, or does it not really matter where they are as long as they're in the text?
I don't think it matters. There's nothing out there to say specifically. So yeah, I think as long as it's in there, it's just obviously in that first 100 characters, it's what you want to get the reader's attention. So try and make that like your big statement. We can help you do this.
That makes sense. Thank you. And when you were mentioning rich pins and it pulling from your website, does that literally pull the text from your website if you create a pin, or should you still be going in and creating your own descriptions?
No, it'll pull literally everything. So unfortunately, if you're a jeweler, if you've got on your website all the dimensions and everything at the bottom, that all gets pulled through. The only downside to Pinterest is that they don't understand what new paragraphs are. So in terms of formatting, it all just becomes one big square. So when it comes to the rich pins, it can be slightly frustrating. However, they do have the ability that when you upload it, you can write your own description, but so when you look at a pin, you have your description on the right hand side, but you can also have another bit of a description right at the bottom. And so the rich pin information is at the top, and then near the bottom is what you can write, but no one really pays attention to that. So you can do it, but this is where it gets frustrating with the rich pins. And if you have Shopify, it's probably actually going to be better.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And yeah, I'm trying to visualize it. I feel like I should have Pinterest up while we're talking, but then I think that'll also be a massive distraction. So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, this is the one thing that's frustrating about doing a podcast when you're talking about Pinterest, because it's so visual and there are so many complex elements to it, that it can make it hard to try and visualize. And especially if you're learning about it, it is very hard. But all I would say is that obviously rich pins, they do work. But if you don't have dimensions and all of that extra little nitty gritty, it will be perfect for you.
Yeah. So I think as soon as we've finished, whether you're talking like we are or listening, I think going straight to Pinterest is probably a really good idea, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, and have a little look and play. I think that sounds like a great idea. So I've only got a few more questions, Lianne, which I hope is okay. I promise I'm I promise I'm wrapping up. I did warn you I did have lots of questions.
No,
I'm such a novice.
There's too much to cover on this.
There is. We might have to get you back at some point and go into a bit more. So you were mentioning Pinterest ads. I don't want to go into massive detail on that, but is there anything you want to talk about?
So ads are actually the cheapest paid ads out there at the moment, which is amazing. So it's essentially you just set up a pin, and then you can say what your demographic is. So what I would suggest is that for anyone that's only just starting on Pinterest, don't do ads. Whilst it was, sorry, I'm just trying to move my cat. I've got a dead leg. I would definitely recommend for those just starting out, try and get your audience, try and get people to find you to be established. Usually that takes between 3 and 6 months because Pinterest is a long game. But once you do get started into ads, you can then do your demographic. It's even amazing to the point that you can try to pinpoint the type of I want to say computer, if it's a mobile, if it's a tablet, you can literally home in literally every detail on the age. So if anyone's done any other kind of ad online before anyway, you'll be able to, but I think it's more detailed in what you can pinpoint. But it's essentially just uploading a pin. So, and then once your ad has finished, it then reverts straight back to a normal pin. Whereas in other places, once your ad campaign stopped, then your ad disappears.
Okay, so it's just like promoting a post on Instagram, I guess is the equivalent. So you're just promoting that for a set space of time.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not, because you can promote a pin, but at the same time you can then create an ad.
Oh, okay.
So on Instagram, you got the boost your post, and then you can create the ad. So it's similar. So if you were just to promote it, just to give it a quick boost. So if you've got something that organically is doing amazing, just to keep it doing amazing, you can then promote that pin. But to create a specific, say if you've got a new product being launched, you can then create the ad. But once that ad finishes, it's not going to disappear like every other ad on every other social platform.
Right. So I understand the difference now. So you're creating it as an ad rather than promoting a pin that already exists. Perfect. Thank you. But it sounds like that you'd be better off getting started on Pinterest, see what works and what doesn't before you think about advertising any of your pins.
Yes, no, definitely. Yeah. You need to establish yourself, because I normally say the first couple of months, you need to let Pinterest know you're there, and then they'll discover you. Once they've discovered you and you're starting to get traction, you then need to let your audience know that you're there. And then by the 6 months point, you should then have a couple of months of each of them steps being taken, and then you can start see some kind of regularity on being seen. While 6 months is a long time in terms of social media, a tweet only lasts 2 minutes. A Facebook post only lasts 8 minutes in terms of being seen on your newsfeed and the chance of being seen. Pinterest lasts 3 months. So the longevity, and you can have a pin and 32 weeks later, it could still be getting traction, because it's still, so that's the best thing about that. It doesn't disappear. You can still find it.
Yeah, because it sounds like the more people that repin it or even click through to it, is that what affects how much it's still seen? So I'm assuming that if you have a pin that does really well and lots of people are constantly repinning, does that mean that one will be potentially easier to find ongoing until the popularity drops off, and then obviously it'll probably go further down the search results, I imagine? Oh, definitely. So that's actually a really good way to think about it, because you're right. On Instagram and Facebook, people miss so much. But I mean, I guess that's the other thing, isn't it? Pinterest isn't a social media platform, which I think lots of people, myself included, sometimes have had that conception that it was a social media platform, but actually it is a search engine, isn't it?
That's the thing. People do see it as a social media platform, but it's not. But they do take inspiration, and they are trying to keep users within the platform now, whereas before it was all a case of trying to get them onto the people's websites, take them outside. They are still they've now got idea pins, so they're almost like stories, but they don't disappear after 24 hours. They stay around, but they don't allow you to click out of the Pinterest and go to a website. But they are introduced where you can tag profiles, so you can tag your own profile, and then you can lead them back to your profile, which then shows them everything that you do, which then of course will help with sales and taking them outside the website.
Okay, thank you. So it definitely sounds like, unless you can tell me otherwise, there aren't really any downsides, and as long as you've got a bit of time, it sounds like it could definitely be worth giving it a go at least.
No, I would say the only downside that I would currently say is the fact that they are trying to keep it within the platform, but there are still ways around it. It's just an extra couple of clicks, but it's still user friendly because people still see it as that social media. They're taking on things from like Instagram with the idea pins. They are very much stories from Instagram. They've now got a new thing called takes, which is almost similar to TikTok in the sense of people then comment and link their own videos into it, or their own pins in. So it's very much, they're taking inspiration from social media, but at the same time, they're still keeping it as a search engine.
Okay. And I guess if anything, that might get new and different people using it as well.
Yeah,
as it evolves.
I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to lower the demographic of the users to more like, I want to say millennials, but millennials apparently are getting old, which upsets me. So yeah, the Generation Z, is it? I think they're trying to, there's a lot more on Pinterest of that age range. So I think that's why they're trying to keep TikTok and Instagram.
Okay. Well, I am convinced anyway that it's worth at least having a go. I'm actually quite excited to go and have a look and then potentially sort of, give it a go, create some pins and see what happens. Because I mean, it is a free platform. So I suppose if you all you're going to lose, I guess essentially is time. But it sounds like with, doing a bit of work to get it set up correctly, that, it sounds like it could be really beneficial. So I'm definitely going to give it a go. Thank you. So I've just got one final question before we finish, Lianne, which, and this might be a hard one, and don't worry if you have to repeat something you've said already, but what would be your top Pinterest tip right now?
I actually could only do two. I couldn't whittle down to any less. So I would say to keep an eye out for what's the current trend. So where I've said before about looking at the trends through analytics, it just enables you to be able to make sure that what you're doing is best, and if it's working or if it's not, so you can then choose to delay it. But also when it comes to seasonal content, start doing it a few months before. So now where everyone's doing the lead up to Christmas, or they should have been doing it already, if you start doing Valentine's Day, say at the beginning of December, then you've then got a couple of months before Valentine's Day hits. So you will be fresh in people's minds. And so, just start any seasonal holiday that your business can take part in, promote it a few months before.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much for all of that.
Okay.
This has been so useful and inspiring as well, because I feel like it's definitely something that we can go and have a go at and see if it works. Yeah. So thank you so much. I've really liked talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed it, please do leave me a review. That really helps other people to find this podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and do tell your friends about it too if you think that they also might enjoy it. You can find me at vickyweinberg.com. There you'll find link to all of my social channels. You'll find lots more information, all of the past podcast episodes, and lots of free resources too. So again, that's vickyweinberg.com. Take care, have a good week, and see you next time. If you've been inspired to start a podcast in 2024, I really recommend my podcast host, Captivate. Captivate were my top pick when I started podcasting 4 years ago because of how easy it was for a complete novice like me to get started. I've stuck with them for the last 4 years because Captivate is still really simple to use. They keep adding great new features like the ability to share ads like these, and they've just been really reliable. So when you're ready to start your own podcast, you can use the link in the show notes and get a free 7-day trial with Captivate.